Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. So thank you very much once again, dear devotees. I'm very happy to see you. I hope all of you are doing good. And I hope all of you are in joyous spirits of bhajan and seva in this Kartik Mas. I sincerely hope and pray that everyone becomes happy, and those who are already happy, may you become even happier in this Kartik Mas. Srila Rupa Goswami has said in the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu that one of the 64 limbs of bhakti is to be not disturbed at mind. This is one of the 64 limbs of bhakti. So I sincerely hope that all of you are able to attain this limb of bhakti in this particular month of Kartik. May all of you remain free of all disturbances and be able to progress in your bhajan and seva. So I'll share my screen, and we are continuing from last time, and this is our presentation on Srila Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamritam. Of course, we are studying in detail. So Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, just like every time, I'll request you in between for your inputs, and please kindly provide your inputs. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Now, we will once again offer our obeisances to the author, Srila Rupa Goswami, and we'll offer our obeisances using the following verse. Nirmathya bhakti pathodhim uddhritam bahuyatnatah upadeshamritam yena tam Śrī-Rupam upasmahe. We offer worship to Sri Rupa Goswami, by whom the ocean of bhakti was churned, and the nectar of instruction, that is Upadeshamritam, was extracted with great effort. So Srila Rupa Goswami is very merciful. In the first verse, he has told all of us, especially those of us who are new on the path of bhajan, that if we want to instruct the entire world, then all we need to do is control 6 urges. And by the time we end up controlling 6 urges, our mind will start thinking whether it was, it is worth making disciples after controlling all these 6 urges. Of course, Vaishnavas still do make disciples, and the reason is because sometimes their guru has ordered them to do so. Sometimes there is a genuine need for some devotees to become connected to the sampradaya. So there are various reasons why Gaudiya Vaishnavas accept disciples, but they don't accept disciples for their personal gratification. So by the time they end up controlling the 6 urges, the desire for personal gratification is completely washed away. And when that happens, one does not accept disciples for the sake of personal gratification. Rather, one accepts disciples only for the sake of service to the sampradaya. So, we studied a verse, Vacho Vegam, Manasah Krodha Vegam, Jihva Vegam, Udar Upastha Vegam, Etan Vegan Yo Vishahet Dhiraha, Sarvam Api Imam Prithivim Sa Shishyat. And I explained in the past that this verse is not discussing anything about bhakti. It's just an entry point into bhakti. It has no direct relationship with bhakti, because controlling the urges has no direct relationship with bhakti. Controlling the urges is not any of the 64 limbs of bhakti. So the Vacho Vegam verse is basically a verse which tells us some prerequisites for entering into bhakti. When I was researching into the Upadeshamritam a few years ago, I found out that Srila Rupa Goswami actually has taken many of these verses from existing literature. So these verses that we see, Vacho Vegam, Manasaha Krodha Vegam, many of these verses are already present in literature which were written much before Srila Rupa Goswami. So Srila Rupa Goswami is just taking wisdom quotes from various literature and giving them to us as basic criteria for entering into bhakti. But when the main subject matter of bhakti will begin, Srila Rupa Goswami will personally compose the verses. So just like we studied Vacho Vegam verse, this verse actually is found originally in the Mahabharata. So in the Mahabharata, there is a verse which Sri Vyasadeva has penned down. And when we read this verse, we will see that Srila Rupa Goswami's source of inspiration for Vacho Vegam is this particular verse. So here is the parallel verse from Mahabharata. Vacho Vegam Manasah Krodha Vegam Viditsa Vegam Udaropastha Vegam Etan Veganyo Vishahedudirnas Tam Manyeham Brahmanam Vai Munimcha. So this is verse in the Mahabharata occurs in the Santi Parva, in the section named Moksa Dharma, in chapter 299 of most editions, verse number 14. Tam Manyeham Brahmanam Vai Munimcha. A personality named Hamsa says, I consider that person a Brahmana and a sage who becomes great, Udirnaha, by controlling Vishahed. Controlling what? Vacho Vegam, the urge of speech. Manasaha Krodha Vegam, the urges of mind and anger. Viditsa Vegam. What is Viditsa Vegam? Viditsa means thirst. The commentator Nilakant Chaturdhar explains Viditsa means the urge of thirst, and Udar Upastha Vegam, and the urges of belly and genitals. So Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, how does this verse sound?
Sounds very similar.
Yeah. And this verse has been penned by Sri Vyasadeva in the Mahabharata itself. So basically, these are wisdom quotes. Actually, these are wisdom quotes which tell us what basic Brahminical behavior is before one enters into bhakti. Or like Srila Prabhupada often used to say, first become a human being from an animal. Then one can gain an entry point into bhakti. So this is one of those verses which tells us how to become a Brahmana and a sage, and then one can easily enter into bhakti. So my point in quoting this verse is that we should understand that many of these verses are verses from existing literature, and these verses are not directly about bhakti. These are about entering into bhakti. That is the only point that I wish to convey through this. Now moving ahead, there are two verses which are coming up, and many of us might have studied these verses previously. And these two verses are about 6 activities which are unfavorable to bhakti, and 6 activities which are favorable to bhakti. So Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, uh, by any chance have you memorized the second and third verse?
Yeah. Utsahan Nishet Tarigat Tat Tat Karma Pravartanat Sangatyagat Satoverte Shadbir Bhakti Prasiddhati.
Okay.
What's the first word of the next one?
Atyahara was the second verse.
Atyahara Prayasascha Prajalpa niyamagaha janasangas chalalyam cha shadbir bhaktir vinashyati.
Right. So this was the second verse, and the third verse you already quoted. So these are the two verses which are coming up ahead. So for those of us who have not studied the verses, I'll just give a short summary that these two verses are going to describe 6 activities which are unfavorable for one's bhakti, which Rupa Goswami says which destroy one's bhakti, vinashyati. There's a big question mark if bhakti can be destroyed, and we'll discuss that. And 6 activities which enhance prasiddhyati, one's bhakti. So when I tried to look into these verses, I found out that these verses also are not directly speaking about any activity of bhakti. These verses are also basically what is favorable for bhakti. They are not speaking directly about bhakti. So Srila Rupa Goswami, he composed these verses in the 16th century in Upadeshamritam. So Srila Rupa Goswami's time frame is 16th century AD. And in 15th century, there was a text written on Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is a variation of Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga has 8 limbs: yama, niyama, rules and regulations, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. These are the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. Some yogis, they don't really wish to get into yama and niyama, rules and regulations. So they want to directly start from asana, the third stage. So in today's day and age, yoga has become asana. Directly start with the exercises. That is called Hatha Yoga. Hatha means forcibly. You skip the first 2 stages and jump directly to the third stage, which is asana. So nowadays, when they start teaching yoga, they usually skip the first 2 stages. They don't tell the rules and regulations. There are many rules and regulations in Ashtanga Yoga. To speak the truth, to be a brahmachari, to have kindness, non-violence. Many rules and regulations are there. But these rules and regulations are skipped. Why? Because Hatha Yoga, Hatha means forcibly, just directly go to the third stage, asana. So Hatha Yoga is, there was a manual of Hatha Yoga written by an author named Svatmaram in the 15th century. This is 1 century before Srila Rupa Goswami. And Svatmaram, he first describes, how a yogi should construct a nice cottage in the forest. He says one can only practice Hatha Yoga in the forest. There's no possibility of practicing it in front of a TV screen. So he says one should build a cottage in a forest. The cottage should be, the land on which it should be built should be flat. You should apply cow dung. And he specifies how to secure the cottage from wild animals, etc. And then he says, when the yogi is completely peaceful at mind, that now I can begin my meditation, then he should enter the cottage that he has built, and then he should know a few things about Hatha Yoga. What are the few things that he should know? So Svatmaram says, atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha shadbhir yogo vinashyati. These are 6 things which destroy your practice of Hatha Yoga. Oh, and what are things which enhance your practice? Next verse he says, Utsahat sahasat dhairyat tattvajnana cha nishchayat janasanga parityagat shadbhir yoga prasiddhyati. So 6 factors which enhance your practice of Ashtanga Yoga. So these were originally practices of Hatha Yoga, not Ashtanga Yoga, Hatha Yoga, mentioned by Svatmaram 1 century prior to Srila Rupa Goswami. So Srila Rupa Goswami has almost quoted him verbatim. And since Bhakti is also a yoga, therefore Rupa Goswami has written Bhaktir Vinashyati and Bhakti Prasidhyati, nothing else. So these are basic practices of yoga which are common to all yogis, whether it is Hatha Yogi, Bhakti Yogi, Jnana Yogi. These are practices common to them. So as I said, we are not yet entered into the core of Bhakti Yoga. We are still on the outside. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami is taking principles from different texts, because Srila Rupa Goswami believes very firmly that when it comes to things which are not directly related to bhakti, there are other experts in the world. So why not take help from other experts in the world? No harm in taking help from those who are already expert. Why should we reinvent the wheel every time? So those who are experts in those respective fields, they have already told what should be done, what should not be done. So Srila Rupa Goswami doesn't waste time in reinventing the wheel. Rupa Goswami takes the principles and he uses them in a devotional context. So this is where, we find the source of these verses. So whenever there is a verse which Srila Rupa Goswami is going to quote, but that verse has an existing source, so I will point out that existing source, because we need to know where Srila Rupa Goswami is taking his inspiration from, because Srila Rupa Goswami also wants to make it very practical in day-to-day worldly life. So this is the practical day-to-day aspect of practice of our Bhakti Yoga. So dear devotees, Srila Rupa Goswami begins the second instruction. We have the second instruction in front of us, but before he begins the second instruction, our commentator, Sanskrit commentator, his name is Sri Radha Raman Goswami. Previously, I did not quote from him because he had not commented much on the first verse. So now I am quoting from Sri Radha Raman Goswami. He was a Mahanta of the Radharaman temple. So he is in the Guru Parampara of the Radharaman temple. He has written a Sanskrit commentary on the entire Upadeshamritam. So he introduces the verse. He says, Idanim sadhaka chittasya tadrisha abhyasa abhavat prakritattvena tad avasthayameva bhakti vinashaka prasadhakani aha. He says, Idanim, now, since the new practitioners are unable to easily regulate the 6 urges mentioned in the previous verse. So he agrees that there were 6 urges which were meant to be regulated. So since new practitioners are not able to easily regulate these urges, their heart is often materialistic. Prakritatvena. In such a weak state, tadavasthayam, bhakti vinashaka prasadhakani aha. There are various activities that destroy and enhance their bhakti. And these activities are spoken of in 2 verses. So this verse will speak of activities that destroy bhakti, and the next verse, verse 3 of Upadeshamrit, will speak of activities that enhance bhakti. Now there's something very important to be noted here. The commentator ended up saying something very important, that only for new practitioners is there a possibility of bhakti being destroyed. For those of us who saw the commentary carefully, he said very clearly, new practitioners, and their heart is materialistic. So for them, there are various activities that can destroy their bhakti. So the commentator is trying to imply here that when one becomes advanced in bhakti, then there is rarely a chance of bhakti becoming destroyed. Bhakti can be destroyed only when it is very soft and pliable for a very new devotee. That also it is not destroyed. It seems as if it is destroyed. So this, when Rupa Goswami will say that bhakti is destroyed, the commentator is indicating that destroyed only for a very new devotee who has just begun. So please don't think that it will be destroyed for a seasoned devotee who has practiced since many decades. No, that will not happen. So for new devotees especially, take care that your bhakti may be destroyed if you indulge in these 6 activities. What are the 6 activities? Srila Rupa Goswami says, atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. Now, for every verse, I am going to point out the meter. So the meter in this verse, since there are 4 lines, in Sanskrit we call charanas. So since there are 4 lines and there are 8 syllables per line, so this is the standard meter which is employed in most of Shastra. The standard meter is called Anushtup. So most of the verses in Bhagavad Gita are in this meter. This meter is named Anushtup. Atyahara prayasascha, prajalpo, niyamagraha, janasangascha, laulyamcha, shadbhir, bhaktir, vinashyati. So these are the 6 things which destroy one's bhakti. Now we will try to see the word for word meaning. So Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, I'll need your help in translating the verse. I will speak the original term and you speak the meaning, Prabhu. All right?
Yes, sir.
Bhakti
Bhakti
vinashyati
is destroyed
shadbhihi
by these 6, namely
atyahara.
overeating or overconsumption.
So cha means and, but we don't want to put and repeatedly, so I put a comma. Okay. Prayasaha,
Over endeavor for non-devotional gain.
prajalpaha,
Fruitless talks.
cha niyamagraha,
Neglecting or forcing rules.
janasangaha,
Associating with worldly non-devotee individuals.
cha
And
laulyam.
fickleness of the mind.
So Prabhu, you just have to read the translation in sequence now.
Bhakti is destroyed by these 6, namely overeating or overconsumption, overendeavor for non-devotional gains, fruitless talks, neglecting or forcing the rules, associating with worldly non-devotee individuals, and fickleness of mind.
That's it. This is called anvaya. Anvaya means you reorganize the terms in such a way that you get the translation automatically. So we have performed anvaya of the verse. So here is the plain vanilla translation based on the anvaya that we just read. Bhakti is destroyed by these 6, namely, first, overeating or overconsumption, over endeavor for non-devotional gain, fruitless talks, neglecting or forcing rules, associating with worldly non-devotee individuals, and fickleness of the mind. So shadbhihi, by these 6, bhakti is destroyed. Now, as the commentator Sri Radha Raman Goswami has already indicated, that for new devotees there is a possibility. They have just begun in bhakti. If they start indulging in these 6, there is a possibility that their bhakti might be completely uprooted in the very nascent stage of their devotion. So therefore, new devotees especially take care. Seasoned devotees should also take care. For seasoned devotees, the bhakti may not be fully destroyed or uprooted, but bhakti may suffer a severe setback by indulging in these 6. So this is the anvaya, word for word meaning and translation, plain vanilla translation that we have performed. Now the commentators start explaining atyahara. The first commentator is Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur, and Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur explains what is atyahara. He says, atyahara adhik aharan va sangraha va sanchaya cheshta. He says the term atyahara, ati means excess, ahar. So what does ati ahar mean? Overeating, over consumption of any resource, or over collection of any resource. He says, grihatyagi bhaktera sanchaya nishedh. A renunciate is forbidden from any collection. So he is separating 2 categories, the grihasthas and the renunciates. He says for renunciates, they are not supposed to do any atyahar. They are not supposed to collect anything. And grihi vaishnavera yavat nirvaha sanchayera avashyakta tato adhika sanchaya atyahar. And the householder should collect only as much as needed. And any excess collection is known as atyahar. Bhajan prayasi gana vishay digera nyaya sei rupa karibenna. A devotee trying to improve in their bhajan should not behave like materialists. So this is Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur's explanation of atyahar. So basically, atyahar is separate for the renunciates, atyahar is separate for the householders. For the renunciates, any collection or storage, Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur says, is atyahar. So sounds very strict. And for the householders, whatever is necessary, as much as needed. As much as needed for what? As much as needed for one's bhajan, for one's bhakti. That much should be collected. Anything excess is atyahar. So this is the definitions, the parameters of atyahar that have been set by Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur. We see clearly that Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur has not only restricted atyahar to overeating, because ahar literally means eating. So Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur has not restricted atyahar only to overeating, but he has expanded the scope of the term by saying overindulgence in any sense gratification, overconsumption of anything is atyahar. Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur also says in another book why he has done that. He says, because if I limit atyahar only to overeating, then there will be a problem. What problem? Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur says, in the previous verse, Rupa Goswami has already said udar vegam, that, try to control your urge of eating. So if Rupa Goswami again says atyahar, about same point if he repeats, then there will be a fault, punar ukti dosh, fault of repetition in subsequent verses. So Rupa Goswami is not going to end up repeating the same thing twice, especially in such a small book like Upadeshamritam. Therefore, atyahar has to be broadened in scope. Therefore, Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur broadens the scope of atyahar. And ahar means all consumption from all the senses. Overconsumption through the sight, overconsumption through the ears, overconsumption through the mouth, overconsumption through the belly, genitals, overconsumption of any sort becomes categorized as atyahar. So I hope this is clear, dear devotees. Now, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives a new dimension to atyahar. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, Jnani ganer atirikta jnana sangraha, karma phalavadi ganer phala sanchay, anyabhilashi diger atishay sangraha I atyahar. He says the Jnanis, the impersonalists, excess accumulation of impersonal knowledge is atyahar. The fruitive Vedic karmis, accumulation of fruitive pious results is atyahar. And the over collection of non-devotional objects by those who are averse to bhakti, all these are atyahar. So basically, over consumption takes on completely new different meanings in this commentary. So if an impersonalist is trying to collect knowledge, impersonal knowledge, I am one with Brahman, so that is atyahar. That is basically over consumption of knowledge. If a person who believes in the fruitive sections of the Vedas, karma kandi, he is thinking of going to heaven, swarga kamo yajet, but I will perform this yajna and I will go to heaven. If he is listening to the fruitive words of the Vedas, apama somam amritam abhuma, we will drink soma and we will become immortal. If he is thinking like this, this is atyahar. And then any anyabhilashi, any person in general disinclined to bhakti, maybe yogi, believer of Sankhya, believer of Jyotish, astrology, etc. So anything that they acquire, any excess consumption, that is atyahar. Basically, all boundaries sealed. Nothing can escape. This is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So this is, atyahar. Now, all of this sounds very nice, and the standards have been set pretty high, very high. Now, as devotees, when we hear this, we may become a little disappointed. Why? Because today's age is a very difficult age, very difficult. Because it's very nice to hear lofty standards in the books. But when it comes to ground reality, we are living in an age where we are surrounded by all-round atyahar. All-round atyahar. The devotee finds himself bombarded by atyahar of all senses. Excess consumption through the ears. Excess consumption through the eyes. excess consumption for the stomach, excess consumption for speech, and excess consumption for remaining sense organs. Tell me, Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, does this represent the situation accurately?
This is our life.
Yes, Prabhu. This is our life. And devotees are living in this age. And then the devotee, after living in this age of atyahara, where there is so much ahar, so much sensory input coming for each and every sense, everybody is waiting to serve you, and almost for free. Almost for free. They're willing to give you a 2 months trial before they charge your credit card, right? So everybody is willing to give you free atyahar. In this age, when a devotee hears the acharya say that you cannot indulge in atyahar, at that time the devotee becomes a little disappointed. And the devotee asks a very normal question, that when so much ahar, so much input for the senses is available to me, and everybody in the world is doing it, everybody in the world is doing it, then why not should I also indulge in this? Very logical question. Everybody is doing it. Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, everybody is consuming input through all these sensory mediums. Why should I not consume? Please tell me.
It affects the quality of your mind in a way where you're not able to focus on spiritual things as well. And when you want to focus in that way, then you become motivated.
Okay. But, this doesn't sound like a very, convincing reason. My mind becomes focused on so many things. Yeah, that's what these things are meant for. These things are meant for that. Prabhu, so much variety of sense gratification is meant for indulging my mind in so many directions. Of what will I do sitting at my home? So many hours of the day. So, I need some engagement for my mind. Therefore, so many things have been invented. So many times devotees think like this. Why not? So we have to understand that the acharyas have given us some strict instruction, but there is a why behind it. Why should I avoid atyahar? Once we understand the why, once we understand why should we not indulge in these things, and once we understand what we can do to replace these things, then it will be very nice to avoid, it will be easy to avoid atyahar. So why should we not indulge in atyahar? Because the previous authorities have told us that every human being has basically only 2 resources in life. So for myself or for Dhāmeśvara Prabhu or for any one of us, all of us are having only 2 main resources in life. Dear devotees, everybody is competing for these 2 resources that we have in our life. Let's understand the resources that we have in our life. What are the 2 resources? An ancient Sanskrit verse explains. This verse is from the Shukra Niti, the Niti of Shukracharya. Bhagavan Shri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Kavi Nam Ushana Kavi. Amongst great thinkers, I am Shukracharya. So this is Shukracharya's Niti, Shukracharya's wisdom. Shukra Niti says, Kshanashaha Kanashashchaiva Vidyam Artham Cha Sadhayet Shane Nashte Kuto Vidya Kane Nashte Kuto Dhanam. Kshanashaha Kanashashchaiva Vidyam Artham Cha Sadhayet. Good knowledge should be acquired by collecting and saving fractions of time. Kshanashaha. And prosperity should be acquired by collecting and saving fractions of money. These are the only 2 things that you have in life. Time and money. Only 2 resources that everybody has in their life. Kshane nashte. For one who wastes fractions of time, kuto vidya, where is the possibility of acquiring knowledge? And kane nashte, and for one who wastes fractions of money, kuto dhanam, where is the possibility of acquiring prosperity? So these fleeting moments of time that we are wasting, these fractions of time that we are wasting, this is actually a resource that we have in our life. And this is the first resource. And the second resource that we are having in life is money. So basically only two resources we are having in our life, dear devotees: time and money. These are the only two resources. All other resources are created by these two resources: home or property, any other thing, car, computers, mobile phones, all other resources are created by putting in these two resources. Kshana and Kana. Kshana means time, Kana means money. So these are the only two resources that we are having in our life, basic resources. Now, let's get back to our problem. We are facing sensory input from so many places. Now, Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, I will list one by one all the sources of distraction. Please tell me if they are trying to get our time or if they are trying to get our money. All right. First,
Okay.
sensory input through ears. What are they aiming for? Time or money?
Both.
Both. But mainly, they are aiming for the attention, basically, of the user. Money, they're not so much worried about. Primarily, they are aiming for the attention or the time resource. So this is the first. Second, through the eyes. Let's say a website like YouTube. They calculate their success by how many million views, how many hours. So basically, million views, number of hours. This is a competition for what? Money or time?
Time.
Time. And then, websites which feed us, they are aiming for our money. They're not worried so much about time. They want our money. Now, websites which allow us to exercise our speech, are they charging you anything, Prabhu? No.
No.
What are they aiming for?
Time.
Time. And finally, websites which provide gratification to all other senses, they are mainly aiming for money. They don't worry about how much time you spend on their sites. So all of these various sources of distraction are aiming only for two resources, dear devotees. First is time, second is money. I have boiled it down to two very simple resources. If you remember these two resources, these are the only two resources you have. And I have highlighted time because between time and money, one of the resource is a non-renewable resource. You cannot get it back. And that resource is time. So the most important resource that a person today has is the time that he or she is spending. Those who are millionaires in terms of money, they are beggars in terms of time. You will notice this thing. They are beggars when it comes to time. Many of us today are not suffering from poverty of money. Many of us today are suffering from poverty of time because our time resource has been snatched away by many of these distractions. Now, originally, these distractions were presented to us as facilities for improving our lives. Is that not so, Dhāmeśvara Prabhu? Yes. For example, WhatsApp, when you first install it on your phone, you feel as if now I can easily speak to people. I don't have to walk to their homes. That is how it's presented. You don't have to walk to a person to speak to them. You can speak directly through the phone. So it sounds very nice and easy, but they don't tell you that now you will have to speak to thousands of people simultaneously. How many people can you fit in your home, Dhāmeśvara Prabhu?
Oh, 40 tops.
40 tops. And how many people are chatting with you on WhatsApp?
More than that, I guess.
So Prabhu, was your life facilitated or made more cumbersome?
More cumbersome.
Yeah. So these are originally presented as pralobhana, incentives. Just like I said a few sessions ago, the British, when they introduced tea in India, they gave it for free. Why? So that Indians could get addicted to tea. And now entire India is addicted to tea, as if tea was invented in India. It's like this, as if tea was discovered in India. Actually, the British brought tea with them to India. So this is how each and every of these resources is originally they are presenting us as conveniences, but in the longer run, they become major disturbances. They become major consumers of human time. And that is what atyahar, avoiding atyahar is about. Avoiding atyahar is about saving time. Dear devotees, please try to understand why are the acharyas telling us to avoid atyahar. The acharyas, their motivation in telling us is so that we can save our time, our precious time, which we can engage in so many direct activities of learning about bhakti, practicing bhakti. Traditionally, we did not have so much sensory input. Traditionally, when we had to listen to music, when I had to listen to music in my childhood, my father used to take me to a music concert. Or we had a radio, a very old radio I had in my childhood. And that radio also used to catch 1 or 2 weak signals from All India Radio. And sometimes, I used to listen to some classical music, Hindustani Sangeet, which they call it. So this is traditional ahar for the ears. Traditionally, when I had to see something nice, so we had something known as drama. So drama, natak. I remember in my childhood, my father took me for watching many dramas, natak. The local native language that I speak, my mother tongue is Marathi. Marathi, there is a very rich drama culture, even today, very rich culture of drama. And this culture is so nice because it derives a lot of things from the ancient culture of drama, which Srila Rupa Goswami was also practicing. Srila Rupa Goswami wrote 2 dramas, Vidagdha Madhav Natak, Lalita Madhav Natak. So Natak means drama. So this culture of drama was present since thousands of years, and it is still present today. And I feel very grateful that in my childhood, my father took me to watch many dramas. I remember there was one drama, but there was a very talented person. His name is Lakshman Deshpande. He performed 10 roles single-handedly. So there was a drama where only one character is there and he will perform 10 roles. It's one of the one of the nicest memories of my childhood, that going and watching a drama live. Watching a drama is much different from watching YouTube, dear devotees. There's a great difference. Let me tell you what is the difference. When you watch a drama, there are living people in front of you performing, and the rasa flows. The emotions flow from the heart of the performer to the heart of the audience. Therefore, you might have noticed that in a drama, the closer you are seated, the more expensive it is. You might have noticed it in theaters. Whereas in movies, the further you are seated, the more expensive it is. You might have noticed something. So this is a difference. Why? Because drama is a very up close and personal act. And previously it was the source of entertainment for the eyes. And people wouldn't waste so much time. It's not that there was drama on demand. Dramas used to be once a month or maybe twice a month if we get lucky, not on demand. So this was proper ahar. Now, for eating, previously, mother used to cook. Very simple. I saw my mother cooking since childhood. Every day she would cook. And sometimes family would get together. They would cook something nice on festivals. On Diwali, they'll cook some nice sweets. This was traditional eating, basically. So this is what we had. Then for speaking to each other, I had many friends in my childhood. Yeah, I remember in my childhood, I had at least a group of 20 to 25 friends in the locality where I stayed. And in summers, when I used to go to my village, all my cousins used to be there. So never a time when I needed an electronic device to speak to others. So this was traditional mode of speaking. And for purchasing something, I didn't have millions of things on my fingertips. We had very simple shops, barter system sometimes, right? So, Dhameshwar Prabhu, are all these things present in Krishna Lila?
Definitely.
Live music,
Yeah,
live,
for sure.
live dramas,
Yeah.
homemade cooking,
Yes.
direct interactions with people,
Mm-hmm.
and buying directly from merchants.
That one we can see.
This culture I was brought up in. And then where did I get lost? I got lost in today's age, where all of these things were turned into electronic commodities. Dear devotees, this is the great difficulty of today's age. If we want to seriously take up saving time, maybe we should seriously consider reverting back to one of the traditional methods of sensory input. I hope the point is clear, because as soon as you indulge in an electronic method of ahar, then that electronic method is bound to take up time and is bound to take up money. So dear devotees, sometimes we should try to revert back to the traditional methods. Once I went to my Guru Maharaj, Sri Radha Das Goswami Maharaj, and I asked him, how should I save my time? I asked him a very important question. How should I save my time? Because I was just newly into the Grihastha ashram, and I was told by many people, Grihastha ashram means, you have to, a lot of time is spent in maintenance. So I asked my Guru Maharaj, how should I save time? So he said, well, obviously you have to do the obvious maintenance of householder life. But then he said something which I still remember. He said, but once in a while, you should die for a week. And die for a week? He said, yes. Once in a while, you should just tell your family, I'm going somewhere. And then, besides your family, you should not tell anybody else. And for a week, you should disappear. And then, as if you are dead. And see if the world is working without you. See if the world continues without you. Because many of us are thinking that after I die, what will happen to the world? But after we die, the world will continue just as it is continuing right now. So he gave a very pertinent instruction: die for 1 week. That is a very good way of saving time. Die for 1 week. And sometimes we should die for a week, because life is not always about speaking to hundreds of people, watching hundreds of videos on demand, ordering food on demand. Life is not about that. Life is about saving time for quality spiritual purposes. And that is the reason why atyahara has been so strongly, the acharyas give a strong recommendation to avoid atyahara. Now, many times we think that we are the consumers, and I have quoted this verse previously, that actually the objects end up consuming us. I had quoted a verse from Bhartrihari in one of the previous sessions. Bhogana bhukta vayameva bhukta. Bhartrihari says in his Vairagya Shatakam, 100 verses on detachment. Bhogana bhukta, we did not consume these objects. Vayameva bhukta, they ended up consuming us instead. They ended up consuming us. Sometimes, often some of my relatives ask me, and it comes as a surprise to them. There's one thing which I have successfully managed to avoid till now, that is purchasing a vehicle. So I don't own a vehicle in my life. So sometimes many of my relatives are very sad, very much surprised. They ask me, why don't you own a vehicle? It's a status symbol. Everybody has a vehicle. And why, you can just It's so easy to own a vehicle. So I just say that, I just, I just, I just, pretend and I say, well, I'm very lazy. I don't want to drive. But the reality is that first and foremost, uh, uh, if I purchase a vehicle, that vehicle itself requires so much money in maintenance. And just because you have a vehicle, you have to compulsorily drive it. If I keep the vehicle just lying there without driving it, it means that the vehicle will sooner or later get rusted or will stop working. So anybody who owns a vehicle knows that you have to keep the vehicle warm. You keep the engine warm, especially in the winters. And the way to do it is by driving it. So not owning a vehicle saves so much time. But here in where I stay, there is so much public transport, so much public transport. You just show a hand and one person will stop for you, a taxi will stop for you and drive you wherever you want. And the amount of money that you spend on a taxi is not even half the money that you will spend on owning a vehicle and maintaining it. So it makes logical sense not to own a vehicle. So we may think I own a vehicle, but the vehicle ends up consuming you. I am consuming the vehicle, but the vehicle ends up consuming you. It's not only about the vehicle. For any object that we purchase, I own a cell phone, but cell phone ends up owning you. So that's what, for any object, Bhartrihari, way back, about 1,000 years ago, said very clearly, Bhogana bhukta vayam eva bhukta. We did not consume these objects. They ended up consuming us instead. So it's very important to understand that this over-consumerism is definitely a big trap for all of us, because actually we are the ones getting consumed. We are the commodity is the consumer. If we can understand this thing, the commodity is the consumer and we are the consumed, then we will be very careful in investing our money and time in certain commodities or certain places. Now many times devotees, they say that, well, uh, it's difficult for me to, not overindulge. I need some comforts in life. That's okay. But we should understand that a devotee is supposed to uh, collect only as much as needed. In fact, collecting as much as needed is one of the 64 limbs of bhakti. It's directly bhakti. Now, Rupa Goswami says, this is limb number 8 of 64. Yavad arthanuvartita. So limb number 8 is accepting as much as needed for one's bhakti. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami quotes a verse. What is the verse that he quotes? Yavata syat svanirvah svikurya tavadarthavit adhikye nyunatayam cha chyavate paramarthatah. Yavata syat svanirvah svikurya tavat arthavit. An intelligent soul, arthavit, should accept only accept as much as needed for their bhajan. Adhikye, anything more, nyunatayam cha, or anything less, Shyavate paramarthata, can cause one to fall away from paramartha, from attaining the ultimate goal of life. So even if you take lesser than what you need, sometimes people think I'll be more renunciate, I'll take lesser than what I need. That will also cause us to fall away from our goal of life. And if we take more, that also can possibly make us fall away from the goal of life. So we have to be very careful. Once again, Rupa Goswami doesn't give the same yardstick for everybody. Everybody has to decide for themselves. Vedic culture, everybody has to think. Nobody else will do the thinking for us. We have to think. We have to apply the intelligence. It is we who has to think, not spoon feeding. Oh, every day eat 10 morsels. No, sir. An elephant will eat differently, an ant will eat differently. So what is Yavad Artha for an elephant and what is Yavad Artha for an ant? This will be different. So everybody has to determine for themselves. That is Vedic culture. Think like a Brahmana. Think like an intelligent person. Then you can advance. So that is Yavadarthanuvartita, accepting as much as needed. So every sadhaka should decide, how much do I need? Need means need for my bhakti, not need for my sense gratification. How much do I need for advancement in my bhakti? That much I should accept. And anything else, well, anything else will end up owning you, will end up consuming you. Please remember this. You may own more than that, but that will take your excess time. Is it worth it? Sometimes it may be worth collecting something more, but please know that it will take up your excess time. It will definitely take up your excess time. And same is the case with renunciates. Renunciates may not collect money sometimes. Renunciates sometimes collect disciples. And when they collect, the more number of disciples that renunciates collect, the more time they spend with the disciples. Every disciple comes with a set of different problems. Every disciple has many things going on in their life. After some time, a renunciate thinks, most of my time is spent in marriage counseling. Why? Because so many disciples and they all have marriage problems. So why did you over collect? Very important. Please, how much do you need for your advancement in bhakti? Very important. Subtle principle. So a renunciate should also think. A householder should also think. Everybody should think. How much do I need for my advancement in my bhakti? It is left up to you. Srila Rupa Goswami trusts you that you will make a good decision. And therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami has said it is one of the 64 limbs of bhakti, accepting as much as needed for one's bhakti. Now, sometimes devotees accept a lot and then call it Yukta Vairagya. Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, I could manage with a Dell, but I took an I bought an Apple. What is it called? Air, MacBook Air. Yeah, I bought a MacBook Air. Why? Yukta Vairagya. I can do better seva. How does that sound, Dhāmeśvara Prabhu?
Sounds like you're overusing your license.
Yes, Prabhu. But can I use Yukta Vairagya as my excuse?
You have that capacity, but you shouldn't.
So we have to define, Prabhu, what Yukta Vairagya is. Because the term has become so loosely used nowadays that one can end up buying a Mercedes A-class and call it Yukta Vairagya when one's need can be satisfied in a simple Chevrolet. So, so what is exactly Yukta Vairagya and what are the parameters and definitions of Yukta Vairagya? Let's learn what is Yukta Vairagya straight from the author who defined the term Yukta Vairagya. So let's learn Yukta Vairagya from Srila Rupa Goswami himself. How does Rupa Goswami define Yukta Vairagya? Yukta Vairagya is defined in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as follows. Anasaktasya vishayan yatharham upayunjatah nirbandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Dear devotees, this is the verse which defines Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya is not just a term that, any sense gratification I took and then I added the label Yukta Vairagya and then it becomes okay. That's not Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya has 3 strict conditions applied on it. These conditions are given in the first 3 lines. And the 4th line says Uchyate. This is known as Yuktam Vairagya. This is known as Yukta Vairagya. Let's study the 3 conditions which are often neglected. First condition, Anasaktasya Vishayan. A devotee who is first and foremost anasakta, completely unattached to sense objects. First condition. The devotee who is indulging in some sense object should be completely unattached to that sense object. Second, yatha arham upayunjatah. He is accepting only as much as needed. And third, nirbandha, very eager, Krishna sambandhe, in matters related to Krishna. Such a devotee is said to be practicing Yukta Vairagya. 3 conditions I have listed. Anasaktasya vishayan. He is completely unattached to the sense object that he is indulging in. Second, yatha arham, only as much as needed, upayunjata, he is accepting. Third, nirbandha, and is very eager, Krishna sambandhe, in all affairs related to Krishna consciousness. This person is said to be practicing Yukta Vairagya. Now, often the case is that I am completely attached to sense objects, first. Second, I am accepting much more than what is needed. And third, I am not very eager in matters related to Krishna consciousness. I am flouting all the conditions. And then, Prabhu, I label my sense gratification as Yukta Vairagya. Just because I put a tulsi upon it and offered it to Bhagwan. Does that sound good, Prabhu, or does that sound kaitava, akaitava, or sakaitava? How does that sound?
I would say sakaitava because you're not being honest with yourself and you're not taking the word of Shastra.
Right. So, whenever, dear devotees, we use the term Yukta Vairagya, we should be very careful that we should follow the exact definition of Yukta Vairagya that is given by Srila Rupa Goswami. Yukta Vairagya is not a term for whitewashing our material desires in the name of Krishna consciousness. Yukta Vairagya comes with 3 strict conditions. First, whatever object of senses we are indulging in, we should be unattached in that object. Second, we should accept only as much as we need. Third, and we should be very eager. Our main point of eagerness should be our bhajan of Krishna, not the sense object. So if these 3 conditions are satisfied, then our Vairagya is Yukta Vairagya. Otherwise, basically, it should not be called Vairagya. Otherwise, we are engaging in bhoga. We are engaging in sense gratification or atyahara. So, dear devotees, we should very importantly learn not to misuse the term Yukta Vairagya. Completely unattached. What does it mean to be completely unattached? Rupa Goswami explains. What does it mean to be completely unattached? What is the attitude of a person who has Yukta Vairagya? The nature of a person who has Yukta Vairagya. Alabdheva vinashteva bhakshyaachadana sadhane aviklavamatir bhutva harimeva dhiya smaret. Alabdheva, when attempts to eat or clothe properly are unsuccessful. Sometimes we want to get something to eat. Alabdhe, we can't get it. Sometimes we want something nice to wear. Alabdhe, we don't get it. Vinashteva, sometimes we get it, but it is snatched away by providence. Bhakshya, eating, achadana, dressing nicely, sadhane, any such facilities. Aviklava bhutva, when this happens, devotee should become completely unperturbed at mind and harimeva dhiya smarit, and should remember Hari very favorably. This is the attitude of the person who is fixed in Yukta Vairagya. So when attempts to eat nicely, dress nicely are frustrated, still a devotee says, okay, no problem, no issues. I am not disturbed by this. It will come tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Nice food will come. No issues at all. All right. It often happens. Sometimes we're standing in a queue for prasadam, and often the sweet got over just before we were served. Alabdeva. We didn't get it. Or the sweet was served, but some other devotee asks us, Prabhu, I didn't get sweet. Can you please give me yours? Vinashte. It was taken away. So when we don't become disturbed in such situations, when we remember Bhagwan Hari favorably without losing our patience, without losing our calm of mind, then we are situated in Yukta Vairagya. Dear devotees, that is Yukta Vairagya. This is Yukta Vairagya. This is how a devotee should be. So, dear devotees, I have defined today atyahara from the previous acharyas. I have also told what are the modern challenges that we are facing, because atyahara is coming from every direction. And a very simple solution is to try slowly but surely to switch to traditional methods of ahar. I told you what traditional methods of ahar I have seen in my childhood, and you can also try to gradually switch. Not everybody needs a smartphone. Some of us can also have a dumb phone. No problem. No problem. Yeah. So I'm suggesting a few things. I'm not saying everybody should do this. I'm also myself trying to do this. I'm suggesting a few things. All right. Not everybody needs a YouTube premium subscription. Not everybody needs to have a music list on these applications like Spotify. I learned about these things. These are various, applications that take away your time. Thankfully, I'm still away from, taking a premium subscription or having an account on Spotify. And thankfully, I've still avoided Instagram till today. Facebook is there, which is taking away my time, but I'm trying to reduce it as much as possible. So Everybody should try. I am also trying. I am struggling in some places. You might be struggling in some places. Try honestly to avoid atyahara. Dear devotees, I will end with a quote from Srila Prabhupada. Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, kindly read what is given by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Uvachi.
Atyahara means to acquire more than we need. Because we have to maintain this body and soul together, then we must earn something or acquire something to keep my health and body fit. That is all right, but we should not try unnecessarily for accumulating more. Suppose if I am satisfied by some grains and vegetables and fruits and milk, if my health is properly kept, why should I eat more than that, simply for satisfying the palate, my tongue? Oh no, we should not do that. Yadraja labasantushta. So atyahara, to accept more than what we need, that is against Krishna consciousness.
Very simple. Srila Prabhupada summarizes whatever we learned today in a very simple single quote. So with this, dear devotees, I'd like to thank all of you once again for kindly being here. Dhāmeśvara Prabhu, thank you for kindly hosting today's presentation. And my sincere thanks to all the devotees who were present here today. Yadatra skhalitam kinchit vidvam saha purayantu tat. Yadatra saushthavam kinchit tad guru reva menahi. Yadatra skhalitam kinchit. There is a possibility I might made a mistake in speaking something. If I made a mistake, vidvamsah, you're all learned devotees, purayantu tat. You correct whatever mistake I made. But yadatra saushthavam kinchit. Is there anything nice in what I spoke? A single slide, a single verse, a single sentence, a single word, a single syllable, or even half a syllable. You can't break beyond that in Sanskrit grammar. So if even half a syllable was nice, tad guru reva. It belongs exclusively to my Guru Janas, my Diksha Guru, Shri Srimad Radha Govinda Das Goswami Maharaj, my Shiksha Gurus, all the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, all the God brothers of Srila Prabhupada, all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas from all the parivars that have existed in the past, that are existing in the present, and that will exist in the future, including all of you. You are all my Shiksha Gurus. So it belongs to you. May nahi, it doesn't belong to me. Thank you very much, dear devotees. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Hari Parsha Prabhu, for your generous sharing of your time and these wonderful teachings. It's been a really, really nice class. Thank you again. And we'll go to questions and comments now.
Yes.
Starting with Srinath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope everyone is doing well. So my question is, we often hear one more aspect of atyahara, which is accumulation of knowledge, especially Vedic knowledge. So how this falls in the when it falls in the category of atyahara. I have heard this multiple times, like
very nice.
With different speakers.
Very nice. So it's a very nice question, because one aspect of atyahara is to acquire excessive knowledge. So what is the meaning of excessive when it comes to knowledge? Because many times devotees say that excessive Vedic knowledge is atyahara. One should not get excessive Vedic knowledge. So dear devotees, this is not the case. Our acharyas have clearly defined how much knowledge we should take and what knowledge is not allowed for us. So in the verse Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhaktiruttama. I have pulled out the verse in front of all of you. You can all see the screen. Anyabhilashita Shunyam. This is the definition of Uttama Bhakti by Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Jiva Goswami is writing a commentary on that verse. In the commentary, Srila Jiva Goswami is going to say something. What is Srila Jiva Goswami going to say? I am going to highlight. He says, Jnanam atra nirbheda brahmanusandhanam. What knowledge is not allowed? Nirbheda brahma anusandhanam. Any Vedic knowledge which points towards knowledge of impersonal Brahman and oneness of the soul and Brahman. that impersonal knowledge should not be cultivated. Natu bhajaniya tatvanusandhanam papi. Don't think that knowledge of bhakti from the Vedas should not be cultivated. Definitely, tasya avashya apekshaniyatvat. Such knowledge is definitely expected from the devotee. So whenever some devotee says that cultivating knowledge is atyahara, we should privately tell them, not publicly, privately tell them that the acharyas have said that cultivating impersonal knowledge is atyahara. Cultivating any amount of devotional knowledge will never be atyahara. Why? Tasya avashya apekshaniyatvat. It is definitely expected from the devotee that they should have devotional knowledge. So as much devotional hunger you have, you can collect that much devotional knowledge and it is not going to be atyahara. That is the answer to your query. I hope you are satisfied with this, Srinath Prabhu.
Thank you. Next we have Omkar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dana Pranam. Class was very good as usual. Prabhuji, I had two questions. One is this regarding Hatha Yoga. What is the exact difference between Hatha Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga? Because if you see when Svatmaram is defining the limbs of Hatha Yoga, he explains the limbs of Ahimsa and Brahmacharya. So what is the difference between Hatha Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga?
So in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, if you see the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, what is the focus upon? Yam and Niyam, or the focus is upon asana?
Asana.
Yeah. So the main focus is asana. Svatmaram doesn't say that you don't need Yam and Niyam. Svatmaram says Yam and Niyam will automatically come. Start asana. Start asana. I hope you're able to understand. Just like sometimes we say, chant Hare Krishna. You will be gradually able to follow the regulative principles. Don't we also say that?
Yes.
Or do we say first follow the regulative principles and only then you can chant Hare Krishna? What do we say?
The former.
So chant Hare Krishna and don't worry so much. Gradually rules and regulations will happen. So in one sense we are also doing Hatha. We are saying forcibly chalo. Because chanting Hare Krishna doesn't depend on first following rules and regulations, but Ashtanga Yoga depends on first following Yam and Niyam. That is the difference between Bhakti and Ashtanga Yoga. But Svatmaram says, forget about that, first asana. So therefore, in today's world, yoga has become synonymous with asana. Patanjali didn't explain a single asana in the Yoga Sutras. All the asanas are coming from Hatha Yoga Pradipika and Gheranda Samhita. So
Yes.
Patanjali's focus in Yoga Sutras is Yam and
Four
Niyam.
asanas. I think
Yeah,
4
maybe.
or 8 asanas.
Yeah, and that too only the names, basically. The Yoga Sutra, only the names. Explanation of asanas is there in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So this is the answer to your query. Okay?
Yes.
The focus is on asana. Yeah.
Yes. And Prabhuji, I had one second question. Nowadays, as we are in this techno-savvy or technological world, we normally what happens is we are at a distance from our Gurujanas, or you can say from like-minded devotees. So we may interact with them. Then how to understand that it will go into the mode of modern sense enjoyment rather than a traditional way where the like-minded devotees meet together, or a student meets his teacher or gurujanas. How to understand it or how to help it?
So in the modern day, we are so conditioned that we can't, walk to a sadhu. So sometimes a sadhu comes online and we associate with the sadhu in that manner. So this association should not be considered as a substitute for actual personal association. Some time ago, somebody asked me, what is the difference between personal association in this Upadeshamritam session, different personal association and association on Zoom, association online. The difference is you don't get to know me because I'm on camera right now. I'm on camera, Prabhu. I'm a different person right now. I'll be a different person once the camera switches off. Isn't it a fact? Yes, sir. Yes, 100%.
Yes.
It's a fact. When the camera switches on, all of us are different. So we get to associate with a sadhu when with the camera switched off, when we meet them in person. And that is when we learn from the sadhu. We learn from the behavior of the sadhu. We learn we get our personal questions answered, something which we cannot ask in a public setting. We can ask that privately to a sadhu. So this is all these things. In any Zoom session, have you heard somebody asking, "Oh, Prabhu, I have a problem smoking cigarettes. What should I do?"
No,
Nobody asks,
never.
right? Why?
It's not the kind of forum.
Obviously, it's not the kind of forum. Guhyamakyati. It will come up in Upadeshamritam. 6 exchanges of love. They can't happen on Zoom, Prabhu. What? Give me something on Zoom. Dadati, chalo. Give me something, Omkar Prabhu. Huh?
Prabhuji, I remember when you went on the Honest Man's podcast.
Yeah.
And you said, it's traditional. You should give the guest some gifts. So just imagine you're giving me a flower garland, and you turned off your video, and you put one on, and then you came back, and you're like, "Oh, it worked."
Yes. So, where is Dadati, Pratigrinati, Guhyamakyati, Prichati, Bhunkte? Feed me something, Omkar Prabhu. I want to eat some prasad. It's not possible. None of the 6 exchanges are possible. So that is the difference. Okay, Prabhu? I hope it's satisfying.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I had a question or a couple questions about the word Vishaheta.
Yeah. Sure.
I was wondering, well, first of all, what's the verbal root? What's the significance of the word, like in the Sanskrit language? And then what does it look like practically and subjectively for a devotee to apply that method? As different urges come up, what does it look like practically and subjectively for a devotee to practice Vishaheta?
Okay, so let's take it one by one. First and foremost, as I had explained, that there is the verbal root. The term is Vishaheta. Actually, it is V plus Saheta. It is not Sha, it is Sa. Saheta. And the verbal root is Sahamarshane, basically to tolerate. The verbal root itself is in the context of tolerance, Sahamarshane. So that is from Panini. So what is the question exactly? What does it mean to tolerate?
Well, sometimes our translation, like in religion, they have very different connotations. So Vishaheta, does that just straight literally mean tolerate that I have an urge and I just myself experience the urge without acting on that urge?
No. The tolerate doesn't mean you block it. Vishahit doesn't mean you block it every time. Vishahit means you accept what is recommended dose for you. That is Vishahit. And you don't allow it to, you don't consume more than that. So that is Vishahit. So Vacho Vegam, what is allowed speech for you? You consume that much. Manasaha Vegam, what is allowed for you? You consume that much. Jihva Vegam, what is allowed for you? You consume that much. So Vishahit doesn't mean that you cut it off. So that is not Vishahit. That is basically, if you artificially do that, it is karmendriyani sanyamya ya aste manasa smaran. You will start thinking of it. Rupa Goswami wants be natural. Whatever stage, if you are not able to do Vishahit, let's say certain devotee is not able to do. So Rupa Goswami doesn't say, oh, now you are discarded. No. Only thing is, you can't instruct the entire world in that particular discipline. That's all. nothing else. If you can't control a certain urge, don't instruct the world in that urge. That's all. Very natural, very organic, and doesn't expect you to do anything out of the box. Bhakti will gradually allow you to control everything. Nothing unnatural. Like Raghunath Das Goswami, initially he was taking money from his uncles when he went to Jagannath Puri. So that level 1. Gradually, level 2. He stopped taking money. Gradually, level 3. Started begging. Gradually, level 4. Started eating the remnants of the animals. Gradually, level 5. Eating what even the animals would not eat. Gradually, level 6. Eating only once a week, that too buttermilk. All of this happened gradually and very organically and naturally. So this is Vishahet. You are expected to do Vishahet according to Shastra. If you're in householder life, Shastra tells you how much you should regulate. That's all, nothing else. So that is the meaning of Vishahet, tolerate.
So it's like moderate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Moderate.
When I think of tolerate, I think of like matcha sparsas tu konteya, like, you know, it's cold and I have to tolerate the feeling of cold, or, you know, if I work out and then I'm sore, I just have to tolerate that feeling until it goes away.
Right.
So does it carry both senses of
For
control and tolerate?
for a renunciate, some things have to be tolerated. For a householder, they have to be moderated. So it depends on which ashram, which you are in. So I explained all of the things in the.
Okay. Thank you,
So
Prabhuji.
for a householder, you know, you can moderate. A brahmachari or a sannyasi also can moderate when it comes to eating, when it comes to speaking. They can moderate. But there's one thing which the renunciates have to tolerate. They cannot moderate, which is upasthavegam, urge of the genitals. For the renunciates, other vegas they can moderate, but one vega they have to tolerate. Basically, upasthavegam. That is what it is. And even if they fail in tolerating, then there is arop siddha bhakti. So everything was covered previously. That was right.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Next we have Radhika Vallabha Prabhu.
He is my dear friend from ISKCON Chopati, Radhika Vallabha Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Very elated in class. I wish I can hear all the previous classes also in due course of time. I just had a few questions. I think one question was related to the devotee asked earlier about accumulating more Vedic knowledge, and then you nicely quoted from Goswami's commentary and the Ramya verse. So the knowledge of the impersonal Brahman is completely to be avoided. But I want to know about your opinion about the knowledge of the Bhakti scriptures is completely favorable. That should be accumulated. But apart from impersonal knowledge and apart from, say, direct Bhakti scriptures, we have many other scriptures in the Sanatana Dharma. So suppose somebody wants to study about the concept of dharma from Mahabharata, or somebody wants to study, say, Nyaya or Vyakarana or Mimamsa. So we don't find directly related to Bhakti. At the same time, we don't find impersonal Brahman also. So in regarding study of those things, like what are your thought process? What should be how we should approach them? And then I have some follow-up, some more questions. But
okay. So thank you, Prabhu, for this question. I'll rephrase your question. The question is, Jiva Goswami said knowledge of impersonal Brahman is not allowed. So I would like to clarify here. He said Nirbheda Brahma Anusandhanam. So he did not say Nirbheda, he added something, Anusandhanam. To do a lot of research only into the impersonal Brahman and to start, considering oneself one with it. To have basic knowledge of impersonal Brahman is not incorrect. But if you start doing anusandhan, you start researching into it, basically. That is what is not allowed. Because in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami is also going to explain something about Brahma. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdeti. So Brahma will also be explained. So it's not that absolutely zero knowledge we should have about impersonal Brahman, but anusandhanam, if we make that as our main research in life, that should not be the case. Similarly, our main thing should be bhajaniya tattva anusandhanam. We are researching into bhakti tattva. Now, for researching into bhakti tattva, a certain devotee may feel that he or she is not satisfied with his current level of knowledge or her current level of knowledge because he or she doesn't know a certain limb of Vedic knowledge. So they may learn that because it is helpful for their bhajaniya tattva anusandhanam, for their research into bhakti tattva. So as long as the aim is bhajaniya tattva anusandhanam, research into bhakti tattva, till that point of time, acquiring any knowledge of any corollary limb of the Vedas is good, because your main aim is anusandhan of bhajaniya tattva. But as soon as that is lost, and then somebody says, oh no, varnashram tattva anusandhanam. So if that becomes the aim of life, instead of bhakti tattva anusandhanam, if varnashram tattva anusandhanam becomes the aim of life, then Jiva Goswami will say, well, this is, this is jnana karma adi. It is covering up, basically, your bhakti. So keep the focus on bhajaniya tattva, and any anusandhan, any research that you do, and any other help from any branch of Vedic knowledge that you need, even if you need to study what is the impersonal Brahman, if you need to study what Shri Adi Shankaracharya said because you want to use it as Purva Paksha, as in, then you can definitely study it. Why not? But it requires a very mature devotee to understand this. It's not the cup of herbal tea for for a newcomer. So that is, it's very important to understand it in a very mature way. What Sri Jiva Goswami, with every sentence, he is giving us so much facility. But only a mature person will be able to understand it and apply it. So, tasya avashya apekshaniyatvat. Prabhu, if you are going to study literature in Sanskrit, will you be able to do that without knowledge of Sanskrit grammar? Can you study Shakespeare without knowing English grammar? Is it possible? Not possible. If you are going to study literature only in Sanskrit, you need knowledge of Sanskrit grammar. So if you want to study a devotional literature in Sanskrit, bhajan tattva anusandhan, you need knowledge of grammar. That is tasya avashya apekshaniyatvat, which is definitely expected. But keep your focus on bhajan tattva anusandhan. That is the point of Sri Jiva. Then you have all the freedom in the world. Freedom is for a person who understands responsibilities. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's a very good clarification. Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks. And one more question related to the point of atyahara. Like in the Bhagavatam 11th canto, and Krishna describes the varnashram system. In one verse, he says that the natural quality of a Vaishya is that he has a ever increasing desire to earn more money, or he's not satisfied with money, like that he mentions. So, like these Rupa Goswami's instructions, it seems to be like these bhakti principles seem to be oriented more towards the Brahminical mindset. But like, how do we suppose somebody has a Vaishya, he has a natural desire to earn more money, but how do we see that it doesn't go into atyahara?
All right. So if somebody has a natural desire to earn more money, because often those who are merchants have a natural desire to earn a lot. And obviously, if they earn a lot, then they'll have a good lifestyle. But then such people should also develop a desire to donate a lot, to spend a lot on good causes. Otherwise, they're becoming misers. So they are also Vaishyas. They can become Vaishnavas. But they should be Sadvaishya. Sadvaishya means they should give a good amount of charity. Good amount of charity. When they give a good amount of charity, it purifies them, because it's not easy to let go of that hard-earned money. But when they let go of it voluntarily, it definitely purifies them. Obviously, when the individual practicing is of a Brahminical mindset, that individual has a lot of advantages. But doesn't mean that a person who is having a mindset of a merchant cannot practice bhakti and cannot practice these principles. They can practice these principles, but the guru has to tell them how much of the money they should be dovetailing in bhakti, and how much of the money they should be giving for devotional causes. All that has to be regulated by the guru, and also as well as by the individual himself. Once that is done, then there is no problem at all. Rupa Goswami got a lot of money. Got a lot of money during his retirement. What did he do? Donated. 75% was donated, because it was his retirement. Before retirement also he was donating, but not 75%, maybe lesser amount, but he was donating. And so everybody should learn dan, the culture of donation. There is a special session that I took on dan. Why is dan important? Why is it important to give charity? Dan is considered to be one of the Yoga Dharmas in Kali Yuga. The main Yoga Dharma is Kirtan. The secondary Yoga Dharma in Kali Yuga is Dan, charity. So primary Yoga Dharma is Kirtan. The secondary Yoga Dharma defined in Puranas for Kali Yuga is Dan, charity. To give as much charity as possible. One should not be miserly. So this is very, very, very important, and it deserves a special session of its own. But in general, devotees should give. If you get some happiness in life, distribute it. This principle. If you get some happiness in life, distribute it. If you get a pack of sweets, first feed others. If you get some money, first feed other members of the family. If you get some resource, first give the happiness to others. This is a Vaishnava. This is a Vaishnava. If a devotee can learn this mindset, not that if I get a pack of sweets, first I will take aside my quota and then give my remnants to others. That is a miser. So we should learn the broad-minded Vaishnava way of living. I hope this satisfies.
Last, yes. A small one question. That a third criteria for the Yukta Vairagya, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe translation was that eager for service to Krishna. Where is that word eagerness coming from? That Nirbandha Krishna Sambandha. Nirbandha is that word?
Nirbandha itself means agraha. In Amar Kosh, Nirbandha means agraha. Agraha means eagerness.
Okay.
You know what the term agraha in agraha means? Sometimes you go in a wedding and people tell you, please take this food, please take this food, please take that food, please take this food. People serve you with, how are they serving you? They are doing agraha. They are eagerly, putting things in your plate. That is called agraha. That eagerness is called agraha. So nirbandha basically is a synonym for agraha. That's how I translate it. Nirbandha. So they have agraha, they have eagerness. In what context? Krishna sambandhe. In any context related to Krishna. So that is basically Yukta Vairagya. Otherwise, what will happen? The nirbandha, the eagerness will become towards the sense object. Rupa Goswami wants to avoid that. Therefore, he says the nirbandha, the eagerness should not be towards the sense object. The eagerness should be towards Bhagavan and Bhagavan's service. That is when it becomes Yukta Vairagya. Otherwise, if the nirbandha is towards sense object, it will never be called Yukta Vairagya. Basically, it is bhog. So many times, the point of quoting the verse is many times people are misusing the phrase Yukta Vairagya, and just any sense gratification is being whitewashed as Yukta Vairagya. So we should know what is Yukta Vairagya, and we should not cheat ourselves. That is
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I always thought the word nirbandha meant detached, like bandha means bound. But as you say this, it occurs to me that it would be redundant because anasaktasya means detached.
Right. So,
Thank you. Next we have Dipayan.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
yeah, Haribol.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciated right from the Shukracharya shloka and the Bhartrihari shloka and the explanation of Yukta Vairagya in the question answers also and in the session also. I had just one very small question. At the beginning, you quoted Radha Raman Goswami's commentary saying that new sadhaka. So because the new sadhaka is not able to control the 6 urges, these 6 activities may spoil his bhajan. But
Yeah.
for experienced devotees, that's not. So is there like, what do you mean by new and experienced? Is there like a demarcation in terms of stages of bhakti, or like how can we understand that? I wanted to ask.
Very nice. So is there a demarcation between a new sadhaka and a sadhaka's experience? Obviously, there is a demarcation. The demarcation will be given by Rupa Goswami himself. In the future verse, Krishneti Yasya Giri, one who is simply chanting Krishna Krishna Nam. That is a new sadhaka, basically. He's a new sadhaka. Then slightly more mature is Dikshasti Chet, one becomes initiated. And slightly more is Bhajana Vigyam, becomes expert in the art of bhajan. So demarcations will be given in the future, but I am just specifying where in the future the demarcations will be given. New sadhaka means he's just right now begun chanting Krishna Krishna. Krishna iti yasya giri. Krishna iti yasya giri. The name Krishna is on his speech. So that is new sadhaka basically. And maybe somebody who has just got an initiation. These two are basically new sadhaka. You can consider them as new sadhakas. But then after that, they have begun service and bhajan kriya. They know what is the art of bhajan, what is the meaning of bhajan. Bhajan doesn't mean taking a harmonium and singing a song. That is what bhajan means in modern India. Bhajan basically is a term. The term bhajan is formed using the verbal root bhaj and then the suffix u. Bhaj, lute. So bhajan means any act of service basically is bhajan. So any act of service becomes known as bhajan. So that is what bhajan is. So once one becomes expert in knowing what is bhajan, what are the various types of thousands of types of bhajan that exist in Hari Bhakti Vilas, in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, 64 types of bhajan, 9 types of bhajan in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5 types of bhajan in Chaitanya Charitamrit, and 1 main type of bhajan for Kali Yuga, Harinam Sankirtan. So he knows all of these types. So then he becomes expert. So that is, I hope you're able to understand. It clarifies your.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Next we have Bhakti's iPhone.
Hare Krishna, I'm not able to hear you, Mataji.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can also see you now, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I ask a question from the last class about ashram? I actually posted the question, but I was wondering if we can address it today, if you have time.
Sure,
if not, that's fine.
Sure. We can address it right now because there's nobody else raising their hand. So let's answer that query.
Okay, so basically, I thought that I knew what is ashrams, but of course, after listening to Anashrami, I feel I don't know about ashrams. The reason that question came up is because about the example that you gave of Raghunath Das Goswami, who is classified under Anashrami, really blew my mind off on like, how could it be? Essentially, if any devotee who is a brahmachari and he remains a brahmachari, does not enter grahastha, does not enter vanprastha, may not be ready for or interested in becoming a sannyasi, but who is following all the first shloka of Nectar of instruction, why would that person be called anashrami? Just because of the age, just because he didn't get married? Like, what is that? So that's why I'm all confused on the.
Okay.
I think I need to understand what is an ashram to really appreciate what is an ashrami. Thank you.
So the example was given of Shri Raghunath Bhatt Goswami. actually.
Sorry.
Raghunath Bhatt Goswami. His parents, till the time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, till the time your parents are there, you stay at home. Don't get married. So now this automatically means he's not a brahmachari, because a brahmachari doesn't stay at home. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said brahmachari gurukule. There's a verse, brahmachari gurukule. Brahmachari stays in Gurukul. He stays in the ashram of the Guru. So anybody who's not staying in the ashram of the Guru, that person is not called as a brahmachari. So brahmachari means they should stay in the Guru's ashram. So Sri Raghunath Bhatt Goswami was not staying there, he was staying at his own home. And now if you're staying at home, home means griha. But na griham ityahur grihini griham uchyate. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a home is not, four walls are not known as a home. It's a housewife who makes the home. It's the wife who makes the home. So where is the wife? But there is no wife. So it's not grihastha ashram. So it's neither brahmachari ashram nor grihastha ashram. And not taken sannyas also, because sannyas means you have to wear a certain cloth and you have to carry a danda. So there's no ashram basically. Therefore, I said these are some cases of people being anashrami, devotees being anashrami. Because brahmachari is not simply who is controlling the senses. Brahmachari is somebody who is staying in Guru's ashram. That is, brahmachari has to stay in the Guru's, under the Guru's shelter. That is brahmachari basically. So I hope this clarifies.
Yes, it does. So there is no age demarcation, so to speak. So a brahmachari who lives in Guru ashram can live until the last breath, and he will be a brahmachari, not an ashrami.
Yeah. If a person is staying in Guru's ashram as a brahmachari, then he can, if he wants to stay so, he can remain a Naishthik brahmachari. Naishthik brahmachari means he can lifelong brahmachari. He can stay like that. That is called a Naishthik brahmachari. And a brahmachari who graduates and graduates into the Grihastha ashram is called as Upakurvana brahmachari. So two types of brahmachari are there: Naishthik brahmachari, Upakurvana brahmachari. So these are two types of brahmachari mentioned in the Shastra. So Naishthik brahmachari stays throughout his life, and at the end of his life, he may take sannyas. At later stages, he may take sannyas. Upakurvan brahmachari, he goes through grihastha, and then that may go through vanprastha, and then may take sannyas. So both may end up in the same sannyas ashram, but one goes directly from brahmachari to sannyas, and one goes from brahmachari to grihastha to vanprastha to sannyas. But one thing is there: once you progress, you should not turn back. That is the thing. A grihastha cannot turn back and become brahmachari. A vanprastha cannot turn back and become grihastha. And a sannyasi cannot turn back and become a grihastha or a brahmachari. There is no turning back. So take your time, but don't turn back. That is the instruction for all the ashrams.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right, any final questions or comments? In that case, I invite you all to unmute and
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah,
I think there was a question in the chat. I was kind of curious for that answer, actually. So I was waiting to hear that answer.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. There's a question here in the chat. It says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the class, Prabhu. I feel a lot of times that I overindulge the senses in material way when I am lacking the facility to engage senses in spiritual way. What would be your advice for this?
So I overindulge my senses in material ways when I am unable to find.
Lacking the facility to engage senses in spiritual way.
Right. So this is a very generic question, and there may be certain senses that you might be overindulging in. So that requires tailor-made guidance. But from the generic question that I heard, I will try to answer. It seems that some good association of a sadhu is needed in order to convince you, the devotee has asked I don't know who has asked the question, but I'm using myself as the reference. It seems that it will take some sadhu's association to convince us why we should give up our material attachments and focus on spiritual engagements instead. that association with the sadhu has not yet occurred, it seems. Or even if it has occurred, it has not been deep enough to pierce the heart. We have not gotten convincing reasons to give up sense gratification. Therefore, we are not giving it up. If we are logically convinced, we will give it up. The thing is, we are not logically convinced. So what is remaining? All the arguments are there in Shastra. This perfect sadhu will find out our required argument and give it to us and convince us. But are we meeting the sadhus? Are we taking efforts to meet the sadhus? So my suggestion is, please associate with the sadhus more and more. Please associate with the sadhus more. Because the more you associate with advanced sadhus, the more reasons you will get for giving up sense gratification. So it's not, I'm not like a policeman. I'm not holding a stick in my hand and saying, now you should stop your sense gratification. So not like that. No, no, no. Please associate with a sadhu. You need some medicine. You've not been able to find the proper medicine. So some sadhu has the medicine. So pray to Krishna and you will find the medicine. Till that time, please don't give up the path of bhakti. Continue your practices. The only thing Rupa Goswami says is don't try to instruct the entire world. That's all. Okay.
Thank you. And Manjari Devi.
Hare Krishna, obeisances. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. It's just a short thing. You mentioned a reference from the Puranas that say that the main Yuga Dharma in Kali Yuga is Sankirtan and the second Yuga Dharma is donation. Would it be possible to get a reference for that? If not now, then maybe in the WhatsApp chat, it'd be wonderful to have that.
Yeah, so there is an entire literature which has been written on Dan, and this literature is called as Dan Sagar. So this literature, Dan Sagar, is a Sanskrit literature which contains all the references from Puranas about Dan, and I will share my screen. It was written by Ballal Sen. It is a compilation, Dan Sagar. Now in Dan Sagar, I think it's 700 pages of glorification of Dan, basically glorification of charity. And now Dan of different types is going to say Dan of wealth, Dan of grains, Dan of umbrellas, Dan of shoes, Dan, all sorts of Dan in one book, and glorification from the Puranas. So, but in the beginning, I remember this thing. In the beginning, he says something, and I will highlight. He says, and you might be able to read the Devanagari, Kali Chakita Sadachara Sancharasi. Kali Chakita Sada. It is Sadachar for the age of Kali. So in many Puranas, you will find that Dan is mentioned as the Yuga Dharma, but those are secondary Puranas, not primary Puranas. In the Dan Sagar itself, he also has said Kali Kalmasha Avadanam Dana Nibandham. To get rid of the sins of Kali, there is Dan. So many places in the Puranas you will find. So this is, but one thing which I specifically wanted to point out is, he says Sangrihita Grantha. Which literature am I quoting from? He says Brahmam, Varaham, Brahma Puran, Varaha Puran, Agni Puran, Bhavishya Puran, Matsya Puran. He's quoting from all those Puranas. Then he says, but he leaves out one Puran. And which Puran does he leave out? I want to point that out because it's very important. He says Bhagavatam he leaves out. So I'll try to find, where there was a quote here which says he leaves out Bhagavatam. Why does he leave out Bhagavatam? Because Bhagavatam doesn't speak about Dan. Bhagavatam speaks about Sankirtan. So Bhagavatam speaks about the main Yuga Dharma, which is Sankirtan. But other Puranas, they speak about the Yuga Dharma as Dan, basically. So this is what this entire literature is. If you want, to see this literature is called Dan Sagar. So this is by Ballal Sen, a compilation of, all types of Dan that are there, basically. So, yeah, here he says, I'm sorry, I found out. he says asangrahita grantha namani, literature which I did not include. Bhagavatam cha Puranam. I did not include Bhagavatam. Why? Because dana vidhi shunyam etat. They don't have any vidhi of dani. They don't have anything about dan in them. So I did not include Bhagavatam. So that is what it is. So simple. So you can see Dan Sagar of Ballal Sen. It's available on archive. Dan Sagar. I hope this satisfies your query. Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
Prabhuji, don't you have a class about charity from a verse on the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yeah, yes, there was a class. I remember. There was a class on giving dan, but it's a very basic, just why should we give dan? If I get into Dan Sagar, then it will be like an entire series. What sort of charity we can give, and many temples will like it, but I think better.
Many temple presidents will like it.
Yeah, will like. Welcome, Hari Pārṣada Prabhu. We are organizing a seminar for you. So, but instead of focusing on Dan Sagar, the ocean of charity, I want to focus on Bhakti Rasamritam, the ocean of Bhakti Ras. That is meant for me. But temple presidents can definitely look into Dan Sagar. It's very important for them because the temples have to be maintained. Okay. All right.
Thank you very much, Hari Pārṣada Prabhu. We're very grateful for your presence here and for your teachings. It's wonderful to spend this time with you, and I'll invite the devotees to unmute and share your thank you for Prabhuji.